Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I know it was short notice, but happy that so many of you were able to come and be a part of this. My name is Samantha Becotte. I'm the president of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, and I'm joining you today from Treaty 6 territory in the traditional lands of the Métis. As you've heard me say over the past week, I was very hopeful that the back and forth discussions that were happening over the course of the week would provide us with a path back to the bargaining table. Our concerns with the multi-year funding agreement that was signed with the SSBA and the Memorandum of Understanding that included an accountability framework that was offered to the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation and the Saskatchewan School Boards Association is that these agreements are not binding. The minister keeps saying that they are committed to carrying out these agreements, but when the actions of government continually contradict their words, it's difficult to trust anything that they say these days. So this week, we had requested that one line be added to the collective agreement with teachers. And that line was that the parties agree that the multi-year funding agreement and the accountability framework will be followed and honored. Sounds pretty simple. That was it. Just do what you say you're committing to do. And if government's words were true and that they are were committed to carrying out the MFA and the MOU, then there should be no concern with adding this one line to the agreement with teachers. I have no doubt that we will soon hear from government spin on what happened this week. They will say that school boards have management rights, that STF is trying to take away control from school boards and take over decision-making. They'll say that we want a BC model with hard class caps. They'll say that the teachers' bargaining team hasn't moved on any of their positions. None of these statements are true. What we were discussing this week is a commitment that they will do what they are committing to do. Not a pinky promise deal, not a deal with an escape clause, not an accountability framework that only includes reporting mechanisms, but nothing that actually holds people accountable to the decisions that they're making. One line in an agreement that says that they will follow through on their commitments. We have moved significantly from the opening proposal on classroom complexity. We want a solution that will work for Saskatchewan. And I agree with the minister. Whatever we agree to, the most important thing is that it works for our students. But we need a solution that will be around longer than an election year promise, because our kids' needs won't magically disappear. And I have no doubt that is exactly what the Minister of Education has planned for the multi-year funding agreement or the accountability framework, for them to magically disappear. Once the bargaining is over or once the election is over, I know they will walk back on any commitment in either of those two agreements. And if they weren't going to, why wouldn't they make the agreement, put one line into the collective agreement with teachers? As I said, I was hopeful that the conversations this week would move the process forward. Unfortunately, after receiving no communication from the ministry over the long weekend, after there was a commitment to work on language over the weekend, there were a few back and forth conversations throughout the middle of this week. We were left with a flat out no today, shortly after noon. These actions only provide more evidence that this government doesn't care about resolving negotiations with teachers. They don't want to be held accountable to any of their commitments because they don't care about students or about public education. And because they have no intention of actually working to improve the experiences of all students and teachers in schools across our province. Because of their intransigence and their refusal to negotiate with teachers in good faith and address these priority issues, teachers will be taking additional sanction action. On Monday, we will be starting Work to Rule. Work to Rule is a job action and a sanction that restricts the hours that teachers provide service to 15 minutes before the school day begins and 15 minutes after the school day ends, and also removes all voluntary services provided from teachers, including noon hour supervision. I have no doubt that we will receive another disingenuous invitation from the GTBC to return to bargaining sometime today. The government will come out and say another lie that this is, well, actually, sorry, this one's the truth, that this is the 26th invitation that we've received and that we have declined. And this is true. We aren't going back to the table to stare at each other. The GTBC has no mandate to negotiate on the issues that are a priority to teachers. These invitations are completely hollow. This action will continue indefinitely until government and the leadership of SSBA are ready to make a real commitment and begin negotiations in good faith. I'll say it again. I was hopeful. I didn't want it to come to this point. No one that is part of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, whether it is our members and teachers across this province or our staff, wanted it to get to this point and wanted to have any sanction action. I wanted to trust that the government would be reasonable and accept this bare minimum one-line commitment in the agreement. But last week we said that we were cautiously optimistic for a reason. We were optimistic because we were truly hopeful that we would be able to find a resolution that works for all parties, that would better the experiences of our students, because that is what they deserve. But we were cautious and we were nervous because, as it is said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. The process that we are involved in negotiations with this government is continuing to be prolonged because this government has no intentions of improving teachers' ability to deliver a high-quality education to the children across Saskatchewan, period. Their words and empty commitments cannot be trusted, and their actions have shown us that. So thank you for joining us here today. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you raise your hand. Alexander.
Hi, Samantha. Thank you very much. I guess my question for you is, so work to rule, can you just go over what exactly that means for teachers and for parents who will see this?
Right, so as I said, work to rule is a restriction of the hours that teachers provide service. They will still provide all of the professional services that are outlined within the Education Act. So they'll still instruct students during the school day, but they will be restricting those voluntary services as well as the hours that they work. So 15 minutes before the school day, teachers will arrive to school. 15 minutes after the school day, they will leave the school. And then all of those extra voluntary services that teachers provide that aren't part of their professional responsibilities will be removed until we're able to get back to the table. In terms of what that means for parents, we'll be sharing our communication with the boards of education across the province and divisions. And they'll communicate with the parents in terms of how that is going to look in each of the different divisions across Saskatchewan and how students and families may be impacted by this withdrawal of service.
What do you hope the message this sends to the province? Obviously, this is an action that you haven't taken before in this round of negotiations. So what do you think the message is to the province?
Well, we didn't want to have any actions that were going to be disruptive to student learning or to students' experiences outside of the classroom within the school community. And that is why we have taken the actions that we've taken so far. But government is not taking this process seriously. They are not engaging in good faith. So our hope is that government takes this action as a serious next step in our sanction action. We haven't had that indefinite withdrawal of service yet, whether voluntary or professional services. So this is a significant escalation in terms of what we have had in the past to where we are at now. They need to find a solution that works. They need to make real commitments to teachers to ensure that students are getting the education that they deserve. What we were talking about this week, that one line, is just saying that they're going to commit to doing what they've put into the multi-year funding agreement or into the MOU. There's nothing kind of radical about it. It is just a real place where they can be held accountable to that commitment. So I also saw in the chat, no lunch hour supervision, no sports extracurricular activities. That's correct. So work to rule restricts the hours of work and it removes all voluntary services provided by teachers. Any plan for more action next week outside of what is planned for Monday? So this is an indefinite announcement, so it will start on Monday, and until we have something tangible that will address classroom complexity and a real commitment through the GTBC or through the ministry, somewhere where it can be a binding agreement, where there's a dispute resolution, where there's real accountability around the commitments that are being made to improve experiences of students across the province, then these actions will continue until then. Susan?
Hi, you can hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Okay, just one more clarification. Previously, some of the school divisions, when there was no lunch hour supervision, just ended the day early. Is that going to be the case this time around, or will parents need to come get their children for lunch and then return them?
That's a good question. Each of those decisions are made by local school boards, and so that will be a decision that will be communicated through division administration or the director of education. We don't determine how divisions carry out their plans within the school day, but we're just restricting the work that teachers are providing within that. So divisions should be communicating quickly to parents and families to make sure that they understand how they'll be impacted in each of the local areas starting on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy?
Hi, thanks for taking my question. How do you hope the province responds to this action?
Well, there's a quick response that would be really easy. As I said, we went back and forth quite a bit this week. We were really hoping that the government would take this one line as an opportunity to get back to negotiating on the other items and provide a real commitment to teachers. They can still do that after this announcement or after the actions start. They could take us up on the opportunity that we provided earlier in March with binding arbitration to address classroom complexity. But in the end, we need a solution, a real solution for classroom complexity. And we know it's not going to be solved in 1 year. We're not looking for some sort of magic fix, and there isn't really a magic fix. But we need real commitments that these aren't just election year promises, that they're not just making these commitments because we're in this dispute. We need to know that year after year, the experiences of students in our classrooms are going to improve. We need to know that teachers are going to have the supports that are necessary so that they can do their job and to deliver that high quality education that every child in Saskatchewan deserves and has a right to.
Thanks. And on graduation planning, what does this mean for that?
Well, being part of graduation planning is a voluntary service, although the Minister of Education and the President of the Saskatchewan School Boards had made an announcement last Thursday about ensuring that plans continue. I do know in many areas of the province, parents take on some of those planning responsibilities, especially when you're looking at prom. But in terms of cap and gown and the more academic celebration that happens, teachers won't be involved in planning that while we are on a work to rule or on a withdrawal of voluntary services. Okay, so not seeing any other questions. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us here today. I am truly disappointed that this is the announcement that I'm here making. I would much rather be here sharing more positive news, thanking the Minister of Education for his commitment to improving the experiences of students and ensuring that students' needs are going to be better met in our schools. But unfortunately, there was no willingness to make a real commitment where government and SSBA can be held accountable to what is in the multi-year funding agreement as well as what is in the MOU. And that alone, their refusal to make those commitments is a huge red flag in terms of their thoughts of actually continuing with those agreements beyond the election year or beyond the negotiations year. So thank you all for joining us. I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy your weekend.